I think we're very used to hearing about young men's negative views of young women's and sort of misogyny amongst young men. But this really struck me because we found that 72% of young men have a favourable view of young women, 7%, so not very many really, have an unfavourable view of young women. When it comes to women under 30, though, only 50% have a favourable view. The unfavourable view of men goes up to 21%. And then under 25 women, it's just 35% of young women who have a favourable view of men.
Yeah, I mean, you managed to fuck society. And I can explain how exactly you've accomplished it. See, I actually grew up in a rural village that was incredibly traditionalist. And what I've noticed is that most people, they lived in large families, right? So, like, you had your cousins, your second cousins, your uncles, like all of these people lived in close proximity to each other, and they identify like mostly by the family in respect to the village. And then the village itself had like this level of mistrust towards the foreigner. Like everybody knew each other, and if you see like a random guy just walking into the village, they would immediately ask like, who do you belong to? It's a very weird question, right? Like, who do you belong to? In other words, like they would ask like, which family are you related to, or which family did you come to visit? And so if you didn't have a good answer to this, it's not like they were hostile or anything, but they were incredibly suspicious, right? Like they wanted to know, like, well, if you're not related to anyone, if you don't belong to anyone, why are you in this village, right? So that is kind of like, I believe, the default state of mankind if institutions do not touch the way that human beings organize. Right? Because you get to see it in other countries, you get to see it a lot in the medieval period, you get to see like this thing where human beings just like make connections within families and clans, and then the ones that live in a space, that they're interrogating anyone that comes into the space. But with that said, what I didn't see at all is people hating each other based on gender. Now, it's true, like certain men definitely hated certain women. Like, they would say such and such is a slut, or they would say, like, her family is rotten and therefore she is rotten. Like, this type of hatred does exist. Some women definitely did hate some men. And it was usually, like, family-oriented, right? Like, that family is bad news. And it's because, like, they have a grievance in the past. But, like, the idea of a man to, like, hate all women everywhere, or to have, like, this specific distrust just because she's a woman, that just doesn't happen. And yet, if you look at the UK, it does happen. And so the question is, like, how did they manage to accomplish this? Because, again, I do not believe it's part of the natural state of man. I think it's artificial. And it's very easy to explain, actually, right? Like, imagine you have what the British would call it an Andrew Tate ideology, which is not necessarily, like, from Andrew Tate, but, like, okay, the manosphere, the red pill, okay? And you have, like, this idea that women, in general, or most women, they're only interested in men for the money. They are willing to constantly lie about paternity. They are very selfish, self-centered. They hurt children if left alone with them. Like school teachers, predominantly, if you look at statistics, the numbers of abuses and sexual abuse by school teachers towards their own kids is high. Now, again, if you say this, like, I'm pretty sure you can find a percentage of women that generally do behave this way, right? But if you generalize it and you don't mention, like, the percentage, you say, like, women do this, women are like that. And then you start teaching it in schools, and then you start teaching it in universities, and then you allow the mainstream media to constantly push that, and it appears in commercials, and it appears in movies, TV shows, video games. Well, I'm pretty sure that it doesn't even take 5 or 10 years for men to generally start disliking women. And especially if you then pass legislation that is constantly favorable to women when it comes to divorces, child support, other things, right? So you create incentives for women to actually be selfish. Like, you create financial incentive for a woman to get a divorce and then to take money away from her husband. Without any reason, right? Like, she wasn't mistreated, he didn't cheat on her, but she can just say, no fault divorce, wham bam, takes money. Of course you're going to create resentment, right? And everyone that you would describe this to would be like, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. But then the question is, like, why do we live in a world where the opposite happens? Why can't we live in a world where none of this happens? I mean, look at this, right? Like, this is a newspaper from the UK, and it says, misandry, justified, harmful, or maybe even necessary. Why is this thing allowed? Because, like, we don't live in a free society, okay? Like, let's stop pretending that we have free speech. Like, the United Kingdom is a nation that arrests people over social media posts. Why isn't this journalist arrested? They actually do have laws that prevent people from doing hate speech. Why aren't they applying the laws that they already have? You have other, articles talking about campus prejudice, blah, blah, blah. They are constantly, like, non-stop creating an unsafe environment for young boys and men. Because all they talk about is creating a safe environment for young girls and women, which is fine, but like, if we are creating safe environments, why can't it be a safe environment for everybody? Again, like, these people actually have legislation. They actually passed laws that prevent this type of rhetoric. They do not have free speech, right? Like, they do not live in a free society. It's time to actually live in the present, right? We don't live in the Britain of the 1990s. We live in the Britain of 2026. In 2026, people aren't allowed to actually say whatever the fuck they want. And yet, you have like this constant demeaning and hatreds towards young men. And so you create women that actually look at young men with distrust. I understand why they're doing it, right? Because like a society that's divided is not a society united in its common interests. And so it benefits politicians that claim to represent women's interests, even though when push comes to shove, you end up with women that at the age of 35 or 40, as they hit the wall, the way the internet likes to say, realize that everything they were told was a mistake. Now, again, you can't blame the women for being like this, which, of course, does have merit. But ask yourself this, like, if you actually grew up as a woman in a society that through every single echelon, like through the media, through the schools, through the universities, through your circle of friends, through social media, through everything, is constantly telling you how bad men are, and they're definitely, like, pouring billions of dollars into making you paranoid of men, are you not going to distrust men just a little bit? And then there's the other thing that's happening, and I talked about it, right? When women go to date, because of social media, they get contacted by a lot of men. Like, I'm willing to bet that the average 16-year-old, I'm not even going to say 18, the average 16-year-old woman that's online gets contacted by more men than her grandmother ever had known in her entire life. Okay? Like, if you are just an average-looking woman, the moment you finish puberty and you're available on the dating market, just by making a Facebook account or just by making a Twitter account, you will get contacted by more men than her mother and her grandmother put together knew in their entire life. So what happens? Well, these women, right, like, they're interested in having a relationship with those men. It's normal, right? And so they can't date every single one. They don't have the time to meet every single man. And so, like, they're going to go for the Chad, right? Like, they're going to go for the man that out of all of those that contacted her is the one that has cars, that managed to have a home, that has his life in order, right? She goes for the Chad. And so she contacts Chad, she dates Chad, and generally maybe she even wants a relationship with the Chad. But the Chad is not going to introduce her to his family. She's not going to start grilling with her. She's not going to do anything besides fucking dump. Or maybe he can have a relationship for a while, but, Chad has other women to go through. Because, again, he's part of the top 5%. And so, once the woman gets dumped, well, she's broken now, right? Because, like, she tasted Chad, and she believes that she deserves another Chad. And she's going to go for another Chad, which is going to do literally the same. And this is what people on the internet call the cock carousel, right? And so, like, women are going to just go from Chad to Chad to Chad, which is going to dump them and dump them and dump them. And, of course, like, this is going to solidify her negative view of men, because she's not interacting with average men. She's interacting with assholes. I'm not saying that all Chads are assholes. I'm saying you need to be an asshole to become the Chad. Like, there is something about being an asshole that women are attracted to. You know, they like the quote-unquote bad boy. They want the broken man that they can fix, right? They want the womanizer that they can seduce and be like, okay, well, I am the woman that managed to make him settle. And this is not like based on intelligence. Like it's not like they're planning this, right? It's not like they're premeditating on this. It's just like normal biology for women. Like this is what they're attracted to. I would say that men are also attracted to psycho women, like women that are psychotic and they're crazy, right? Just look at the anime, and you get to see like Harley Quinn, which is unhinged, and she has like a huge fan base of men. It's just like something we can't help each other. I don't know why, but the reality is that social media allows us to connect with these people, and so when you only date the negative of the other gender, and society on top of that only tells you that the other gender is negative, it solidifies this, right? So you end up with men that are quite decent, you know, they're hardworking and they may be actually interested in settling down, but no woman is interested in talking to them. Why? Because, well, they can talk with Chad. And so this is how we fuck the society. With misinformation, with taking legitimate people that exist, but trying to say that all people are like that, with having a game that's not fair, that only applies to one gender and not the other. Like the rules do not apply to authors that write shit like this. And then you have like the confirmation bias, right? When women do actually go date and they date the man that exactly they were worried about. And so you end up with a society where 50% of the women are skeptical or outright dislike or hate men. I don't know how you can fix it, you know? And people blame pornography, video games on low birth rates. If 50% of women hate men, how interested are they in actually having a kid with men they hate? So what, they look at the son, they can see the father? I'm just saying, you know, it's, and not to mention the mental damage that some of these women cause to their sons. Because this is another problem, but you have like the divorced mother, which again, like she has a financial incentive to divorce, and she hates men, and her son happens to be a man. How do you think she's going to raise him? Let me know what you guys think, though, and as usually, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.